Sure.
If you use the actual native phrase or native connotation or twang or spin on it, I would say. So
I can hear some.
Okay.
in English.
Very good evening to everyone. If you're not speaking at the moment, can I ask you to please put your devices on mute? I'd like to welcome each one of you to what is a very important discussion. Thank you for making the time to be here. My name is Ayo Adedoyin. I'm the CEO of PSJ UK. And I'm now going to introduce and hand over to the chair for our discussion tonight, Mr. Jide Yanewura. So I guess if we were not online, we'll be putting our hands together to clap to welcome him, but I'm sure we can do that in our hearts. I give you Mr. Jide Yanewura.
Thank you very much. I want to say welcome to everyone. This is the first of many, hopefully, that we would be having, not just concerning the issue of genocide, but across some of the concerning matters that regards our very beloved country, Nigeria. So without much ado, let me just give you, my name is Jide Yanewura, by the way, and thank you so much, Mr. Ayo, for that introduction. I'm just going to give you a brief rundown of what we're going to discuss and how the program is going to run today. We have some rules. Part of those rules are that if you are not speaking, please put your microphone on mute. It is just civil to do that. The other one is that as much as you would like a very lively discussion and debate, it is not a fight, it's not a contest. Please let us be civil in our utterances. Let us say the right things and make our points in a very civil manner. The other thing is, of course, that I would like every well-meaning person who's either watching now live or who will be watching this program at a later date to understand that the context in which we provide this discussion is really of a very, very good mind. The idea is that we have a very good discussion, a very robust discussion that hopefully will take our nation forward. So, housekeeping, remain on mute. Encourage engagement in the chat area. So we have a chat area that's provided as part of the Zoom process. Please engage with us. Send us questions, comments as you wish on there. Post your questions in the chat area. We will group some of those questions together and try our best to get through as many of those questions as possible. There'll also be an opportunity to be part of a question and answer session. So once the guests and the speakers have spoken, one of the things that will happen is, actually Zoom makes this very, very nice. You can raise your hands just by clicking on that button. Raise your hands, and the assistant on the program would do the needful by identifying the right person, and then I will put you on the floor to speak. Now, what I would do, I'm not the speaker, so I shouldn't take too much of your time. But I want to set the scene. What I want you to understand is that today we're talking about a very, very important topic, which we call Nigeria, an unfolding genocide. It's a very, very, very critical topic. Today is the 6th of July, 2020. And if we look at what has happened in Nigeria in the last few years, and I'm talking probably in the last sort of 5 to 6 years, it almost seems as if we're in a war. And even internationally, a few people have said that the number of deaths that we have experienced in Nigeria in the last few years is as though we were having in the Civil War. So what is informing all these deaths? What do we need to do? And how do we need to speak through to authority? So that's what today's discussion is all about. I have a number of absolutely excellent panelists who will take you on this journey. I'm going to introduce them. I believe I have about 5 of them currently. I have in total, I think I have 6, but I have 4 of them currently on the program. Maybe the remaining couple will join us as we go forward. So let me first introduce Khadija Hawa Gambo. Khadija is a renowned social activist, an Islamic Dahi, which is an Islamic preacher, an advocate of attitudinal change. She founded the Muslim Women Forum for Peace on the Plateau in 2010, formerly known as the Hausa Fulani Muslim Women for Peace. This NGO was born out of necessity to cater for the plight of widows, orphans, and youths. Her quest for comparative knowledge took her to the University of Calabar, where she studied law, and was the first Hausa Muslim lady to study in that faculty of the university. In addition to occupying the role as the president of Muslim Women Forum for Peace on the Plateau, she also is the permanent commissioner of the Kaduna State Peace Commission. Please, ladies and gentlemen, join me in welcoming Khadija onto the program. I also have as a speaker, Bulama Bukati. Bulama, the full name Audu Bulama Bukati, is an analyst in the coexistence team at the Tony Blair Institute for Global Change, where he leads the team. The team's work on sub-Saharan Africa. Bulama has studied extreme groups in Africa, in particular Boko Haram, for over a decade. He focuses on using Islamic religious texts in countering violence ideologies. He has authored a paper entitled Discourses and Constituencies of Boko Haram, which assembled the main ideological arguments and textual authorities of Boko Haram and led to the adoption of a preaching manual for countering violent extremism in the region. Audu Bulama Bokati, you're welcome onto the program. The third person I have is Dr. Ini Dele Adedeji. Dr. Adedeji is a research fellow at the University of Edinburgh School of Social and Social Science, a Center for African Studies. His doctorate degree, received from the School of Oriental and African Studies, University of London, SOAS, was the outcome of an ethnographic study on the mobilization of the Boko Haram sect. In his research, broadly focuses on the intersection of politics and religion in northern Nigeria. He is currently interested in the theme of transnational justice in northeastern Nigeria. Dr. Ini Dele Adedeji, you are very much welcome onto the program this evening. Last, or the fourth, as it were, on the program is Dr. Chinan McLean Dickwell. Dr. Dickwell is the first African person to rise to the position of director at the top international oil and gas company in London. Dr. Chinan is also the vice president of the Plateau State Association UK and the chairman of the Plateau Youth Association. He holds a doctorate in chemical engineering from the University of Birmingham. Dr. Chinan McLean Dickwell, welcome onto the program this evening. Thank you. Now, we also have Mrs. Adetutu Balogun, who will hopefully join us, as well as Dr. Allen Manasseh. If time permits, they will be joining us on the program today. So, thank you to all the panelists. And let me just set the context again. In 2013, there was a book written, a book written and published by Dr. Hamad Murtada. That book was written on Boko Haram in Nigeria, its beginning, principles, and activism in Nigeria. When I read that book, I think it was in 2015. It gave me a very good understanding of what it is that we are fighting against. And as someone who has been in government for a few years and had worked with the previous administration in the fight against this insurgency, I kind of understand firsthand what it is we need to do. But I have to put it to the panelists this evening. I'll ask you a few questions, and please, in about 5 minutes each. So in about 5 minutes each, please give us your arguments and your conclusions on what your thoughts are on the current fights on insurgency in Nigeria. So let me put it first to Dr. Chinan McLean-Dickwell. Dr. McLean-Dickwell, you have the floor. Thank you.
Thanks very much. Julie, that was a very lavish introduction for me. I think, listening to that, that's very professional. But if I just add to that, to give context onto why I'm on the call today, yes, I am the Vice President of the Plateau Association here in the UK. Yes, I am the Chairman of the Plateau Youth Association. But if I just make a few points here, first of all, I have been involved in Plateau State and the dynamics of Plateau State and central Nigeria for a very, very long time. In fact, I get involved on a day-to-day, and I have done for the last 10 years. I lead an organization called Viewpoint Nigeria, where we continually collate information, statistics about what's going on, particularly from sort of a crisis point of view, all these attacks that have been going on since 2010. We collate that on a daily, and we have that locked in a database that we have used in the past for advocacy. So just to give context there, working with past administrations for sort of trying to form policy around that and trying to see how we can bring succor to people in Plateau State. Outside of that, I just ran for the Senate seat of Plateau Central in the just finished election. So I'm trying to paint that picture just so I dispel any myth that I am an analyst who sat in London looking at Nigeria. I am involved in Nigeria on a day-to-day, very much to sort of that level, or what you described as professional. So with all that said, I think if I just make a start here, the topic for today, of course, it talks about Nigerian unfolding genocide, and I take very particular focus on the question mark at the end of that. So it is a question that they're posing, I suppose, but if I would take a view there, I actually think I would drop the question mark. Nigeria and unfolding genocide is what I would call it, from a very factual standpoint, to say, yes, that's what has been happening. Like I painted a picture, I said from 2010 to today, we have, and at the very front line point of view, I have been collating information about virtually every attack in Plateau State, in particular, but much of the Middle Belt, okay? So if you think about that for a minute, it's a huge amount of data that sits there. And if I'm going to make that point, I guarantee you that what is happening, there's no question at all that it is a genocide. Perhaps you'd hear several viewpoints today, some who would say it isn't, and I welcome those sort of points of view. But two things I'd say. I think for the first time ever, for the first time in a long time, we're starting to hear conversations around this, with that G word being thrown in. I absolutely salute APPG for taking the time to undertake this work. I think they're trying to be very careful and sensitive. UK, a colonial master, thinking about Iraq, the mistakes of going into Iraq and all of that. They're trying to be careful not to come out forcefully and say, yes, this is what is going on. But if you look at what's happening very much in central Nigeria, and
Sorry, Dr. Dickwell, APPG, yes, meaning, so that for the benefit of the audience.
Oh yeah, apologize. Yeah, so it's all party parliamentary group of the UK, of the UK Parliament. So it's a cross party group where all of them work together, Conservative, Labour, everyone, they work together to put that out. So the report, if you look at it, is 56 pages, extremely extensive. It touches on the causes of the crisis, it touches on the politics, the dynamics, and all of those things out there. But I still think when I read that, I feel that they have not been bold with it to draw the conclusions that there are. And this is the point that I make, that the UK, being a colonial master, is trying to be careful from the diplomatic standpoint, but also thinking about Iraq and what happened. I think they're trying to be. But I'll say this, I come from Jos Plateau. I'm a native of Jos Plateau, just to give context again, because of the things I do there. I am in Jos Plateau minimum 8 times a year, 9 times a year. So very much I live in London, but my involvement there is in the very primary level. I can't start to describe to you what happens out there. If I just paint a picture, I think sort of if you go back to around 2014, 2015, at the peak of it, 7 days in a week, you would have an attack almost 6 days in a week. In fact, they would write you a letter and say, we're going to come and kill. They will come in and wipe entire villages. AK-47, machetes and everything, you know, I don't want to go into how graphic this gets, but the entire point is, if you look at what's happening sort of in the middle belt region and northern part of Nigeria, I'm isolating Boko Haram because that's a completely different dynamic. If you compare that to what happened in Rwanda.
You need to ask that what you are having.
Sorry. So, you know, genocide, if you talk about genocide, genocide is the deliberate extermination of a certain set of people on the basis of either race or their creed or their ethnic identity or whatever it is. That's exactly what's happening. People try to trivialize the issue by calling it a farmer-herder clash. How is it a clash when you are lying in your house and someone rocks up with an AK-47 and he maims and kills and decimates? How is that a clash? You know, so I think there are several things that I see that for us to get this right, and it's not to be sentimental about it, but I think the very first instances of this is that we have to call it what it is. And the ABG group have started to do that by giving it this name. And I think it's a massive step in the right direction. And for everyone on the call, I would challenge everyone to do further research to try to understand the dynamics. I apologize, I know I've just gone over 5 minutes.
Thank you, Dr. Dikwa. Just for your just to let you know, I lived in Jos Plateau State for a few years myself. I studied there. I don't know what it's like now. It used to be an absolutely beautiful place, but hey, that's where we are in Nigeria at the moment. Next, I shall be calling on, and by the way, if you have your questions for Dr. Dikko, please, McLean Dikko, please put those questions aside, and I'll make sure that we take all the questions going forward. I'm led to believe also that Adetutu Balogun has joined us as on the panel. Thank you very much for joining us, Mrs. Adetutu Balogun. Now, let me just read you her bio. Adetutu Balogun is the founder of Caravan of Hope. She's worked in humanitarian action for over 15 years as a sponsor, organizer, and IT consultant. A former sponsor for numbers of orphanages in Nigeria, and a financier of NGOs, including Pensioners Support Group, PSG, Adopt a Graduate, PADs for IDPs, Middlebelt Indigenous UK Diaspora. Her work has focused on the financing projects for less privileged, quarterly distribution of food and essential products, speaking against corruption in the distribution of government aids for internally displaced persons, IDPs, and fighting for resettlements of IDPs. So welcome, Mrs. Adetutu Balogun. So I shall now turn to Khadija Hawa Gambo. You have the floor now, Khadija. Thank you.
Well, good evening. I hope you can hear me.
We can hear you and we can see you very well.
Okay.
It's a bit of a joke. When I say we can see you very well, before everyone came on board, there was no NEPA. So she's had to turn on the generator. So please,
okay. Yeah, to tell you how we are faring here in this country.
Okay.
Well, I think let me quickly express appreciation for being here and quickly say, because I don't have much time, that I will advise that in this discussion that we do it dispassionately. Because unless we do that, we will not be able to diagnose our problems, not even have the opportunity to proffer solutions to them. So I will be speaking as a Nigerian, but a dispassionate one, because I'm going to be talking on issues that have to do with all of us as Nigerians, whether we are in Nigeria or outside Nigeria. And not as someone who is trying to even make peace between the different or divergent groups in the country. But I'll speak maybe in the course of my speaking, maybe that will come. But let me quickly ask this question. I think I have a problem with this title of, that issue of an unfolding Nigeria, an unfolding genocide. I truly have an issue. I have a problem with that because I thank God the last speaker, my brother from Plateau, was able to define what genocide means to mean, okay, a deliberate killing of a group of people, especially because they belong to a particular ethnic community or religion or whatever. And so if we are to go by this definition, and then I will ask this question: who is killing who in Nigeria and for what? I think that will be the question. So if we ask that question, I will now try quickly to give us a map of what is happening in the country as someone who is involved in peace building in the country. And I would say the 6 geopolitical zones of the country, Nigeria, from the north to the south, which is northeast, northwest, north central. All of these 3 geopolitical zones are engulfed in one kind of conflict or the other. Also, if you go to the southeast, the issue of militia, or you go to the south-south, the issue of militia, I think basically you discover that among the 6 geopolitical zones, we can say relatively that it is only southwest that is relatively calm and peaceful. Now, if we take northeast, predominantly northeast is Muslim. If we are to take that, okay, there's a genocide against Christians, for example, let's assume that is it. And predominantly the people in Northeast are Muslims. They are not safe from the conflict, from the violence that we are noticing in the country. They have issues of banditry, they have issues of armed robbery, kidnapping, cattle rustling, and then the mother of all, insurgency. That also, if you look at Northwest, it is the same issue, and Northwest predominantly also is Muslim. But we have all those killings, all of the things that you find in the Northeast are very much available in the Northwest, except that maybe insurgency, but we can see some semblance of what we see now, extremism or youth becoming radicalized. If you take North Central, I do not know whether to say 50-50 or to say, okay, there are more Christians. Let's assume there are more Christians so that we don't go into that debate. There are more Christians there. But you find that in most of the conflicts, whether in Plateau, whether in Taraba, it has to do with a lot of issues. And as someone who has been working in peace building, I can tell you that most of it are far, far from what we, some of us elites, are insisted they are. Let us agree, well, let me say that from my own point of view, and having worked in many conflict areas in Nigeria and outside Nigeria, I've come to realize that behind all of these killings is corruption, which none of us, you in diaspora or some of us who are directly involved, will say that corruption is not part of why Nigeria is having all of this incessant violence happening. And then the issue of governance. You find that wherever you go to dialogue or mediate amongst people, one of the things you hear, it has nothing to do with even the faith of the people. It has nothing to do with the ethnic community they come from. Rather, it is struggle for resource, or it is one anger or the other. Sometimes the narratives that people carry, which I believe was informed by the kind of English and grammar elites speak about discrimination, about deprivation, about all of that. And so there's a lot of narratives across the communities that we have in Nigeria. If we were to say we have over 500 ethnic communities. So each community holding one grievance or the other against the other. And so for me, I will take the categorization of the deposed SLS, the deposed Emir of Kano, Sunusi, Lamid Sunusi, when he said that there are 2 types of citizens in Nigeria.
You have
the haves and the have-nots. Yeah?
Okay. Yes, thank you. Yeah.
Are you hearing me?
We are hearing you, but you have to wrap up now. You've gone overboard.
Okay. So I think basically what's happening in Nigeria, I refuse to agree that there's any deliberate effort by one ethnic community or one religious community to kill the other, but that what is happening is a conflict that has a lot of issues which are sometimes the narratives or our lived realities in Nigeria, which has to do with poverty, which has to do with deprivation, which has to do with discrimination. So I think this is my take, and I don't agree that there's any
Thank you very much, Khadija. Thank you for that. Just to summarize, what Khadija was saying there is that most people being killed are not from largely the northern parts themselves, and it's not just a Christian-Muslim issue. But that is up for debate. That's why we're on this platform. Let me also mention that Dr. Allen Manessa has also joined us. Dr. Allen Manessa is an active humanitarian service provider in the north east of Nigeria. Dr. Allen is the founder of Impact Trust International and a strategic team member of the Bring Back Our Girls movement. Furthermore, he is also director of media and communication of Kibaku Area Development Association and the spokesperson of the Chibok community. So actually very, very key in that regard. Thank you and welcome, Dr. Allen Manesse. What I'm going to say, because I did have a speaker, I'm going to move over to the next person just to give you a bit of time to settle down and catch your breath. So I'm going to go to Bulama Bukati to ask if he can please give us his views. Bulama, you have the floor. Thank you. You're on mute, so you need to come off mute. We can't hear you. Thank
you, Jide, and thank you to the organizers of this very important discussion and to my co-panelists. I am going to highlight 5 things in my 5 minutes, hopefully, and I am going to speak directly to the report. And I'm going to speak to the report because I read the report, but I am not reading the report as a stranger. I participated in the proceedings of the report from the very beginning, which is the scoping meeting, the first scoping meeting to the very end, which was the launch, and I'm on this event today. And I took my time to participate in the program because of the second thing I am going to highlight, which is the importance of the topic for discussion, as Jide has mentioned. Nigeria is in a very, very desperate situation. What is going on in our country is terrible. People are dying, and human life has now become in Nigeria not worth a chicken. Unfortunately, we have forgotten as Nigerians that no death is just a figure. Every human being, every number we hear of, every human being are people like us with families, with dreams, with hopes, with dreams for the future, but it is stolen from them by people who do not have any real grievances against them, without any authority or justification. Now, that's why I participated, but it is also because the issues we are discussing are complex, and they are complex because Nigerians have not been able to come to a shared understanding of the issues driving the conflicts. And that's what we are seeing today on this call. What we are seeing today on this call are, what we have just seen are 2 Nigerians, one saying it is this, the other saying it is not. And that's why when the parliamentary group, the APPG, called me to contribute to this endeavor, I felt obliged as a Nigerian because I came to the UK a few years ago with this theory that the British are objective people who would always see things objectively. And I thought the APPG is going to help us as Nigerians to marshal out the issues, bring out the root causes of this crisis, and we have a common understanding, and then come together and forge ahead. Unfortunately, that's not what happened in this report. The report came with the headline the first speaker has spoken about, with the word genocide, with a question mark. And at the launch, those who spearheaded the report said they put the question mark because they were not sure of what was going on. But we knew that the media goes with headlines. Many individuals go with headlines. And if you look at the content of the report, it is against the weight of the evidence in the report. Because like I said, I participated in every proceedings, and more than 95% of the evidence given at the proceedings said it wasn't a genocide going on in Nigeria. There are religious correlations. None of us we shouldn't deny that. There are religious correlations, and religion might be one of the factors playing a role there. But there are many other complex factors there. Hajia has mentioned some of them. Even the Archbishop of Canterbury said, no, it wasn't a genocide. The Institute for Economics and Peace, University of Oxford, Tony Blair Institute, every institute, independent institute that went there, including Mercy Corps, and everyone said it is not a genocide going on. It is a tit-for-tat crisis that has lots of complex issues, and they are the ones that should be addressed. But what did we see in the framing of the report? They ended with what genocide. Of course, we don't have time. My time has expired. Hopefully, we will go into some of the issues. But
yes.
if you allow me today, I would say, and the impact of what we have seen in the report is the debate. Because as Nigerians, we should be discussing the way out if the report had come out with the issues. But we are here debating whether it's genocide or not.
Thank you so much, Bulama. And that is what I would hope to be able to do when we come to the questions and answer session of this discussion. Thank you. So just to summarize, what Audu Bulama Bokati says there is that he participated in the putting together of the report. He didn't feel that the outcome of the report adequately captured the discussions that they had while the report was being
it is not in the putting together of the report, in the gathering of evidence.
Thank you. Okay, thank you very much. So in effect, there's discussions to be had there. Thank you very much, Bulama Bukati. I'm now going to turn on to Dr. Allen Manasseh to take the floor. Dr. Manasseh, are you there?
Yes, good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
Sorry for joining the team late. I'll go straight to the point. If we dwell more on the word genocide, we will miss the major.
It looks like we were struck by the gremlins of Zoom, the renowned network issue. So what I will do is, if the next speaker would get ready, we'll try and get
the points that have been raised in this report. The issue of
yeah, I think we'll get Dr. Ini Dele Adedeji ready, and we'll come back to Allen Manasseh later on. So, Dr. Dele Adedeji, are you there?
Yeah, yes, thank you.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Thank you.
You have the floor, yes.
Oh, thank you. Okay, great. Good evening, everyone, and thank you for having me on the program. Okay, I think just by way of preamble, I think it's important to separate the crisis in northeastern Nigeria from the killings in the Middle Belt. I think it's important to do so in order to avoid sort of muddying these these I think definitely very, very different matters basically. And so I'm going in light of that, I'm going to focus on the herder farmer crisis in affecting the Middle Belt of Nigeria. And regarding it's interesting just listening to some of the conversations that have been had already on the program tonight, which have mostly focused on whether it's what's happening in the Middle Belt is truly a genocide, and or whether it's not. And I think it sort of goes to show sort of why Nigeria is still struggling to and properly address the issue. I'm not going to join in on that conversation because I don't think I'm well placed to pontificate on whether or not what's happening counts as a genocide or not, because I'm not from the Middle Belt. I think the people of the Middle Belt are best placed to talk about what's happening to them. Basically, they're the ones suffering from. They're the ones at the suffering the brunt of the skirmishes, basically. And so, as someone from Lagos, I don't think living in London, I don't think it's my place to tell them that what's happening to them does not count as a genocide. I think what's more important is, regardless of even if only 5 people were killed, it's every human life is important. Every human life counts. Every human life matters. And we do know for a fact, whether or not a million people have been killed or less, we know that lots of people are being killed due to the untreated conflict between fuller herders and farmers, predominantly in the Middle Belt of Nigeria. And so I guess we need to talk about why people are saying this is an unfolding genocide. Let's not talk about whether it is a genocide or not, but the question I think we should be asking is, why do people think it might be a genocide? And I think we need to first of all go back in time. Let's go back to the way Nigeria was founded, basically. Let's go back to the way Nigeria was put together, essentially. The way Nigeria was put together by the British already set the nation up for failure, essentially, because the nation was essentially set up on a stilted foundation. And these are historical facts. The fact, the fact that the British favoured the House of Fuller hegemony, basically, in particularly in northern Nigeria. And let's move away from that now. Let's come back to the contemporary period that we live in now, and we have to then also look at some of the issues that are plaguing West Africa at the moment. And I'm referring here to the encroachment of the Sahara, basically, on arable land in not just in the Sahel, but particularly in northern Nigeria. And so you see that the conflict between fuller herders and farmers is not actually unique to Nigeria at all. It's an issue that's affecting people in Mali, in Ghana, in Niger, and I think those are the main countries, basically, in West Africa that are witnessing similar issues, to the herder-farmer conflict that we have in the Middle Belt of Nigeria. And so what we have is a case where the Sahara is basically advancing on arable land in West Africa. And so that's forcing cattle herders to move further southward, basically, to find to find crops for their cattle to graze upon. But then the issue is that some of these communities, especially in the Middle Belt, already have land issues. There's a scarcity of land, and so there already existing land pressure issues. And so you then have herders coming onto their land, most of whom are not even from Nigeria. And so that then creates a lot of tension. Now, this, again, as I said, it's not unique to Nigeria. And so the question we should be asking is, how have our other neighboring countries addressed this issue? Now, the thing is,
how are other neighboring countries addressing the issue? Thank you very much for that contribution, Dr. Inidele Adedeji. I'm going to ask if our next speaker is back on, Dr. Allen Manasseh. Is he back on? If he isn't back on, then
yes, I'm back.
Okay, Dr. Allen Manasseh, you have the floor now.
Thank you. Just like what the last two speakers said, my own take is we must look at this crisis in different dimension. we must not focus on that word genocide applicable to the entire regions we have in Nigeria. If we look at it, the war on terror, the terrorism in the Northeast is different from what is happening in the North Central. It's different from what is happening in the Northwest and the other region of Nigeria. So if we are applying the word unfolding genocide to what is happening in Borno, there will be a lot of argument, because the issue is going to be like everybody is affected, which is the fact, and that's the what is on ground. But if we look at what's happening, especially in the southern part of Kaduna, on the plateau, some part of Nasarawa State and Benue State, there is this clear indication of genocide in such location, because we see a whole community getting affected, people coming in, wiping community after communities, chasing people from their villages, taking over the village, and then sitting down there and start living without the state actors getting to evaluate, find out, and make sure that the perpetrators are brought to book. We have a lot of commissions that were set on the plateau, a lot of a judicial commission of inquiry that we have never seen the white paper, and we've never known exactly who were punished because of what happened in these locations. Now, take for example the start of Boko Haram in Maiduguri in particular, when it first started. You know, when it first started, there were pockets of killing of specific people, and the security agency, the Nigerian states were quiet because it was affecting just a particular community of people. Until when it snowballed, when Boko Haram members were chased out of Maiduguri back to Sambisa, and they now revolted full-fledged, and they waged war against Nigerian state, and every other person was affected. But when it was affecting a particular group of people, no action was taken. So these are the type of indicators that will show, and people will conclude that yes, a particular set of people are being targeted, and it is called genocide. I will conclude my submission with this fact that what happened in Chibok was largely a Christian community. Girls were abducted. 276 girls were taken from Chibok. Till today, there is no high-profile Nigerian officer that has stayed in Chibok. When the president in the former government refused to go, the former president refused to go to Chibok, the president refused to go to Chibok, the former UK Prime Minister Gordon Brown flew into Chibok. What stopped Nigerian leaders, especially the presidents of the country, from going to Chibok, sit with the community members, sit with the parents of these girls, and find out exactly what happened? But another leader from UK was able to go there. Is he having a different security backup? These are the type of questions that people will ask. And if I may ask, if actions are not taken after attacks on communities repeatedly, then those people, the end feelers of the unfortunate incident, will have the right to tag that attack based on what they feel is affecting them. This is what brought genocide.
Thank you very much, Dr. Allen Manasseh. Thank you for your contributions. I am going to go on to the last speaker for this evening, and that is Mrs. Adetutu Balogun. Mrs. Balogun, you have the floor. Thank you.
First, I'd like to say hi to everyone, and also I'd like to say a big thank you to PSG UK for having me on today. I hope you can hear me. Okay.
Yes, we can hear you very well, yes.
So I'm going to look at this issue in two different ways. First, I'm going to talk about, we've been talking about the word genocide. You can call it genocide, you can call it atrocity, you can call it cleansing, you can call it massacre. But one thing we all can agree on is we have insecurity issue in Nigeria. But like Dr. Allen said earlier, if you use the word genocide and you generalize, you will not get the picture of how impact of insecurity is affecting different zones in Nigeria. Nigeria is seriously facing a lot of insecurity issue. For me, the part I really want to talk about is not repeating what you guys have said around, we have Boko Haram issue, we have the bandits, and we have the headers. I want to talk about what this issue is leading to, which is the issue of displacements, because that is the area I've been working on. So Nigeria is facing a serious problem of displacement, and from record, I think we have about over 2.5 people displaced as a result of insecurity. So if we're arguing about the fact that we're talking about genocide, or we're calling it massacre, or we're calling it ethnic cleansing, if we have as much as that number of people living in IDP camps for some people 7 years, 8 years, for some people 6 years, for some people 5 years, then we have a problem that we need to deal with. And I'm going to talk about a group of people in Kaduna. I want to talk about the Dara people in southern Kaduna. 55% of the people that live in southern Kaduna, in this particular two local governments, Kajuru and Kasha, they are Christians. And what they've witnessed in the last few years is frequent attacks by people coming to invade their land. When you talk about genocide to such people, they will say to you, yes, it's genocide. Genocide, why? They will say to you, each time my village is attacked, we end up moving to camps. And one of the most painful things for us is not having the ability to go back, to identify how many of us has been killed, and to bury them. I think for such people, when you use the word genocide, they will say, yes, it's a deliberate killing, to destroy our ethnic community. So the reason why I decided to talk about them is that is a very small group that a lot of people are not focusing on. We talk a lot about Boko Haram attacking northeast and north. We talk about all that, but how about these people in a very small part of Kaduna that nobody is even talking about them? For them, if they carry a bow just to move around, either to kill animal, they will be arrested for just carrying that. But here we have elders walking around AK-45, attacking the same group of people, and nobody is doing anything about it. So we're using the word genocide and we're not agreeing, but that is massacre, that is cleansing, that is atrocity, and they're all insecurity. Each time you have that kind of issue, group of people are displaced. When they are displaced, they have to live somewhere. They have to eat, they have to educate their children, they have to try and continue with their life. But who is helping these people? So for me, if we're saying we don't have a genocide, we might not have a genocide in Lagos, we might not have a genocide in Kaduna, but we do have genocide in some parts of Nigeria. I've been involved with the Middle Belt people, and we've gone to Nigerian High Commission 3 times to talk about their issues and their problems. And one of the things that was highlighted the last time I had a meeting with them was the fact that each time these foreign invaders come to their land, they take over a particular community, change the name of the community to whatever name they want, and the people within those communities either accept this new name, do things the way they want, or they are killed, or they have to leave. So for me, that is getting close to having a genocide. And I'll tell you why. In Rwanda, when they had issue of the war that happened in Rwanda, for a long time, nobody called it genocide. Nobody called it massacre. Nobody called it insecurity. The whole world was looking. We just said, oh, the Tutsi and the Utsi are fighting. That was all we were saying. But before you know what happened, we had about a month of campaign whereby thousands of people were killed that led to a war that at least about 1 million of people were killed eventually. because we kept saying, oh, it's just a little insecurity. We could keep saying, oh, maybe we don't have a genocide in Nigeria because one side of Nigeria is peaceful. But how about the minority group in the Middle Belt? How about this minority Adara people in Southern Kaduna that they are being killed every day? So for us to have a solution, we have to look at what we call, there's something we say in IT, the root cause analysis of a problem. When you look at the root cause analysis of a problem, you just don't look at one side, you look at everywhere. Once you identify it, you know what to do.
Thank you so much, Mrs. Adetutu.
Well done, well spoken, thank you.
Now, what I want to do now, is firstly, all 6 speakers have had their floor. I have a few questions I'm going to put through to some members, probably all the members of the floor, and then I would open the floor to a question and answer session. So let me start by asking Hajia Hawa Gambo first. We hear of many Christian communities in southern Kaduna that claim to be persecuted by unknown gunmen and suspected herders. To what extent is that true? If true, what is being done to protect them? If not true, what exactly is happening that the communities are referring to? Please, in about a minute, can you or 2? Thank you.
It's difficult to answer in 1 or 2 minutes, but let me correct an impression, please. Kaduna is not north central. Kaduna is northwest.
Northwest, thank you.
So it does not fall within north central. That's one correction. And then secondly, I am happy that my sister, the last speaker, talked about Kajuru and Kachia. As someone who is a permanent commissioner in the state working in Peace Commission, trying to reconcile all the warring, if I may use that word, communities, I will say that, again, Kajuru is not southern Kaduna. Kajuru is Kaduna Central. Why people think that Kajuru is southern Kaduna is because in Kachia you have Adara nation and also in Kajuru you have them. So because of the language and then also the affinity of, religious affinity, that's why some people think Kajuru is in southern Kaduna, it is not. Now, let me take us back to, and please, I want us to be, because all of us here are supposed to be providing solutions and not compounding issues for Nigeria. And unless we remove our sentiments and we look at things impartially and objectively, it will be very difficult to solve the problems. I agree very much. There are killings in southern Kaduna, like any other place, like in Plateau. But let me quickly say that, again, to answer that question, please. Like Plateau and southern Kaduna, they are similar in the sense that the communities are talking about the contestation is about indigene settler dichotomy. Unfortunately, the settlers are Muslims and the indigenes are Muslims, are Christians. And so any conflict between the two will be seen as now Muslim against Christians or Christians against Muslims. But the issues are, the contestation usually and almost of the time are around socio-economic and political contestations. I agree to that yes, when they fight Muslims and Christians, but it's mostly on issues to do with economy. Fulani,
I disagree.
Excuse me, let me finish, please.
Yes.
If you look at southern Kaduna, what is happening in southern Kaduna, and you look at what happened in Plateau. I was in Plateau. I was born in Plateau. My mother is from Plateau, even though I'm part of the settlers. But actually, the fight was between the ethnic communities and the Hausa settlers. But that was visited. The anger was visited on innocent Fulanis who were not part of the conflict because they shared the same religious identity with the Hausas. And that was how they started being attacked. Now, I want us to be honest because I didn't want to be dragged into saying this. And it is the same thing that is happening in Kaduna. A problem between Hausa, the sedentary Hausas, and the indigens will now end up in the Fulani will be, the consequences will always tell on the Fulanis. And by the way Fulanis are made, they can look foolish. You can do things continuously to them, but the day they want to take revenge, it will be so devastating. And let me say that I have been sitting on Plateau, Kaduna, and from what I have seen, in most cases, the Fulani are always reacting to the offensive and sometimes hostilities that certain communities show on them. I will not disagree that the Fulanis, there are no criminals.
Khadija, can I ask if that is an opinion or a fact?
It's a fact. It's not an opinion.
Where is it backed up? Because
what
when
I'm trying to say,
when we come on a platform like this and we have distinguished ladies and gentlemen on the panel, I'd very much like for us to discuss facts. And as somebody like yourself who is involved in peacekeeping activities, I think it is far, far more prudent that the bias is taken out. So,
I would like to respond to that.
Let me say, excuse me.
So Khadija has the floor, please. So in that, guys, I'd like
no,
to...
excuse me.
Yeah, go on.
Yeah, I want to say something. Nigeria, sincerely speaking, from what I have seen and the work I have done, is divided into two now. The citizens of this country are divided into two: criminals and the good citizens of this country. And these criminals exist in all the ethnic communities. And so, when a criminal does something wrong, the mistake we often make as communities is that we visit our anger on innocent people who belong to that community. I am not saying there are no Fulanis that are criminals. Of course there are criminals. There are Fulanis that are kidnappers. There are Fulanis that sometimes encroach on farms. But what always happens, and that's what we are battling with in Kaduna, is that when a criminal Fulani does something, what happens is that the ethnic community in that environment will now attack an unsuspecting Fulani.
The agitators.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Thank you for that. Thank you for that. Anyone else would like to?
Can I just make a comment?
Chinan.
Yeah. I think, it's great to hear, I think I really take a lot of the points that Hajia has made, and I go back to what she said earlier. We have to be, because it's meant to be a civil discussion, it's meant to be factual, and we need to put those out there for us to assist in proffering solutions as opposed to, adding fire to. And she did say something that was trying to keep it as unpassionate as possible. I think, there's a duty for us to do that. But there's a few things I would say. When you look at the makeup, and I think Nathaniel said something that's really powerful. For us to do justice to this matter, okay, we have to isolate the Northeast a little bit and isolate the North Central or the Middle Belt, if you like. The dynamics between the two are completely different. The Boko Haram crisis, and again, I'm going to go back to one of the things he said. When it started, there were small minority groups that were the targets. This is not Nobody can debate this, because we'll go back into videos and stuff that people have said. Yusuf Muhammad himself has said, and Sheikh has said. So those are quite clear from that point of view. We are targeting you, we're coming to you. When that was happening, I can guarantee you, right, it was downplayed because it didn't affect an interest. Okay? But when Boko Haram finished displacing those communities, and then he became bold and turned his attention onto the majority, it has now become a big problem. I'll take you back to Plateau. I said I started collating data on this from 2010. All right. Now, pre-2010, much of this was a Plateau problem. It wasn't even a Benue problem. It wasn't it was a Jos Plateau problem. And I'm glad that Haji has mentioned that. A bit diversionary, I must say, because, there's nothing about indigents and settlers. That's complete. It's a fabrication from my own point of view. Okay, but the point here is that from 2010 or pre that, you'd be in your village. People are sleeping. People rock up with AK-47s on motorcades. They will kill everything. Go to on the 6th of March. Google your phone. 6th of March 2010. Dogon Nahawa. That was the first biggest one. 500 people. Wrap your head around that. 500 people in Dogon Nahawa were murdered and killed like that. Now, I'm just saying one. Dogon Nahawa is one. There've probably been 20 or 30 Dogona Hawa stuff happened. But the point I'm trying to make here is this: that that's the dynamic. You're asleep. The method is guerrilla warfare. You're asleep. Someone comes, rocks up with AK-47, kills, disappears. Them unknown gunmen. They'll come back next week, and they come back next week. What's the signature of that? They're mainly minority. These are mainly helpless people. So the point I'm trying to make here is that we say we owe it on ourselves to find the solutions. We have to start to call a spade for us to happen. Now, I take it. I apologize. I've got to make this point as well. It started in Plateau, the frontier, moved to other North Central states. Now you tell me. Olufalaye had his whole farm. In fact, he was kidnapped at some point. Pa Ruben Fashoranti had his daughter killed. Go to Abia State. Go to Umar here. It's just the dynamics of crisis. When it happens, you laugh and you say it's your problem. Well, it would, and it metamorphoses, I think.
Thank you, Dr. China. Do I have any more contributors on there? Anybody? Okay. Okay, go on.
This is Adetutu. I would like to give you a couple of statistics just to support what China just said. So in Southern Kaduna, between January to May 22nd of this year, this is statistics. And these statistics still have some figures that we couldn't have today because of some of the people that were displaced that couldn't go back to their community. So between this period, listen to this, 63 terrorist attacks and kidnapping, more than 107 people killed, about 49 people injured, 66 men and women adopted for ransom, over 111 houses burned, 32 villages destroyed, 20,000 people displaced. When people come to your community with sophisticated weapon, that is not clash. That is information.
So the question from my point is twofold. Number one, where are these people getting the ammunition from? Who is for, where are they getting the money to buy? Because an AK-47 is about 1.5 million.
Yes.
Yeah. And so where is the money coming from to start with? Secondly, I take the point that Hajia Khadija made, and I've listened to Chinan as well. If we were to accept that we would not maybe use the word genocide, what is happened in the last 6 years where maybe the statistics that Adetutu sort of reeled out, that almost sounds like you are in a war zone. And this is Nigeria, we never knew Nigeria to be like this. So I really want to understand, is there an undertone of, we will come up to, finding the solution in the next segment. But actually, we haven't even touched what the problem is. What is the problem? There's one part that is saying it is genocide. There's another part that is saying we shouldn't call it genocide, but they accept that there are problems. So what are the problems that we have? Because if people have been sleeping in their homes peacefully over a number of decades, and all of a sudden they can't sleep in their homes anymore, there must be some real underlying problems. What are these problems? Are they political? Ajia Khadija said some of them have to do with poverty and corruption. Others are saying, but look, whether we like it or not, this Nigeria we have today was not the Nigeria that we had 20 years ago. It wasn't even Nigeria we had 15 years ago. So what has changed? What are the dynamics? What are the variables that have changed? And I want us to look at those things. When I talked about Plateau State, I know that people lived peacefully together in Plateau State for years, for centuries. So what are the things that have changed? Are people emboldened by certain factors? What is it that is making people now do and come forward to do some of the things that they're doing? Ini Dele Adedeji.
Thank you, Jide. I think there's this tendency for us to sort of romanticize the past, especially when we're sort of looking at the present. And so there's this sentiment I hear a lot where people say, we used to live peacefully together and things like that. But then history shows us that at no point in time since this contraption we call Nigeria was put together, at no point in time has there been a situation where all of the ethnic groups coexisted in this, in some utopic Shangri-La kind of manner. It's just not the truth. But then the thing is, when we look back at the past and we compare how things were then with what's happening now, we tend to think, oh, things were, hunky-dory back then, as opposed to now. And so it's important to look back then at how ethnic groups coexisted then, to see that what's happening now is only just a degeneration of issues that have always existed, but were never really treated and were allowed to fester. And you'll see that, let's take, for example, let's look at the NYSC, the National Youth
Service Corps.
Service Corps, thank you. The idea behind it was that it was supposed to foster unity amongst all the ethnic groups in Nigeria, right? It was supposed to be for people from the south to know people from the north and vice versa. But it's not really worked. Then the question now is, what was the idea behind that particular initiative? And it was because of issues like this. I mean, look at this meeting tonight, for example. There are only about 61 participants taking part in this, and there are about six speakers. But you're going to be hard pressed to get us to agree on what the fundamental.
Thank you for that contribution. I just want to, because I'm just realizing that we've only just asked one question. I want to ask Bulama Bukati a question. And that question is that a recent poll suggests that there could be a link between the insurgents in the northeast of Nigeria and the militant herders in the Middle East, in the Middle Belt. How plausible or implausible is that? Bulama.
Yeah, I think we are getting to some useful questions because I detest this idea of coming with a position and each of us trying to defend a position. That's not going to take anywhere. And that's why I am not happy with what this report did. What it did is to pit us against in a debate against one another. And this is, we have done enough of that. We have done enough of that.
Okay, let's move from the report. So what's your response to that question?
In my response is that there appears to be evidence that Boko Haram is working actively to recruit from northwestern Nigeria and the north central part of Nigeria. And there is anecdotal evidence that they have succeeded in some elements of the people we call bandit in the northwest and also in the northeastern part of Nigeria. And we see this in some of their recent videos. And it is very clear from this discussion and the discussions we have had before now that Boko Haram is moved by a religious ideology. It is a group claiming to fight for Islam. It exploits Islam and recruits out to commit genocide and exterminate Christians from Nigeria and to kill Muslims that do not subscribe to their ideology and also eliminate them from the surface of the earth. Yeah. Now, and it is true that we shouldn't conflate those crises. And that's exactly what the report did, the report we are discussing. We are Nigerians here and all of us have agreed that what is happening in the northeast is different from what's happening in the north central and different from what's happening in the northwest. But then we know that the report is on the north central, but one of the things it did was the report was dedicated to Leah Sharibu. Her story is a heartbreaking story. Her family is going through tragedy, and I pray for her family and will do anything I can to get Leah freed. But then when we conflate Leah's situation, who was captured by Boko Haram, with the situation in the north central part of Nigeria, we are compounding our problem. Yes. Why are we calling the crisis? So for example, all the pattern of attacks we have all spoken about in the north central is the same with the kind of attacks happening in the northwest. Yeah. Why are we characterizing it differently? 8,000 people have been killed in the northwest. Communities have been displaced entirely. Their villages have been erased or completely burnt down. But it is not called genocide because it is single.
Can I push your thinking a little bit further? Audu.
Sure.
When you look at the origin of Boko Haram, and we understand, I don't know, many of us realized at the time when the police actually caught Yusuf, who was then the leader, and he was killed by the police, if you remember, whilst in custody. And then everything sort of went haywire from then. But prior to that, that group, and I think at that time their real name, if I can recollect, they had a Hausa name or an Islamic name, Arabic name, Jamaat al-Usana, Lid Dawal al-Jihad. Now, when you understand, I lived a little bit in the northern part of Nigeria, and when you understand the concept of jihad, it sort of focuses your mind on a sort of war between two parties or many parties. What is your take, both Audu and members of the panel, on what you see as a war that is being proscribed? And I like what you said, Audu, that we can talk about Boko Haram in the context of Boko Haram is trying to say that, you know, a fight against Christians and also Muslims, because not just Christians, also Muslims who do not subscribe to the ideology. So can we then honestly, without actually trying to be funny to ourselves on this forum, can we say that there is a war? And if there is a war, the definition of genocide, therefore, and I'm not saying that it is genocide, I'm not saying it isn't genocide. If we then look at what the definition of genocide is, it's a deliberate killing, and underlining the word deliberate killing of a large group of people, especially those of a particular nation or ethnic group. So if you try to explode that definition, does that come at all, in your view, anywhere near what is happening with Boko Haram and in the northeastern part of Nigeria? Any member of the panel, please. But particularly Audu, because you were the one that...
yeah, I mean, definitely. So for example, if this report had said Boko Haram is committing genocide against those who do not subscribe to its ideology, every Nigerian would agree. And let's be clear. I mean, some people would say Boko Haram started by attacking a particular community. It was only after it expanded. Which community are we talking about? The first Boko Haram attack in September of 2010 was the first attack was on a prison in Bauchi and a mosque in Maiduguri. And their first series of assassination was against Bulamas, traditional rulers, Muslim scholars who opposed them. The first victims they killed was a Kano scholar, Jafar Mahmoud Adam. Now, we know that Boko Haram is committing genocide, but it is committing genocide against everyone that does not believe in their own exposition. And we must all work together to fight Boko Haram. But the report doesn't say Boko Haram is committing genocide. The report talks about a different, dynamic of genocide as far as it is concerned. So, for example, if we say a genocide of the minority is going on in the north central part of Nigeria, in Benue, who is the majority in Benue? Who is the minority? Who is the majority in Plateau? Who is the majority in Plateau?
Yeah.
Let's understand these issues. For me, this discussion as Nigerians should be what we see in Nigeria, if you want me to summarize, is a total dereliction of duty by the government. It is a government that has abandoned all of us Muslims and Christians, and this violence does not have religion. The poverty we are facing doesn't have religion. The corruption we are facing doesn't have religion.
Thank you.
As long as we continue to frame this as a religious issue, we will keep dividing ourselves, and politicians will continue to suck our blood. And they
thank you, Audu.
Children.
Thank you, Audu. Anyone else want to take on that?
I think
on the floor.
Yeah, I think you asked an important question. You know, what is driving this? And I don't think we've answered it. Nathaniel didn't mention it. I can't remember if it was Ini who mentioned it. The reality of it is, if you look at the, if you look at what has been happening, like I say, Plateau was the epicenter. It moved out of Plateau, went to Benue and everywhere, went all the way down south, all the way down east. Okay. Now we're talking about Zamfara State. So it starts from an epicenter and goes all the way almost southwards. Now, fundamentally, he mentioned something important. The Lake Chad Basin is drying. That's much of where many of the herdsmen all around West Africa is a very pivotal point there, okay, for, you know, feeding the cattle. That's drying up, you know, there's desertification, there's pushing everything southwards. Much of the savanna that exists right now, whether you like it or not, is found in the belt, you know, the middle belt of Nigeria. So naturally, all of these cattle that you have would have to come down in there. They have to feed. So it is true, and I agree with Bulama on that point, there's a resources. Farmers have their farms where they have to farm. These guys are coming to graze. There are sort of skirmishes sometimes, but you cannot separate the fact. You cannot separate the fact. I'm from Jos. I can tell you this one, that there is a mercenary gang in a perimeter that is not more than 30 or 40 kilometers that go and decimate. They'll decimate. You can almost predict it. They'll decimate here and move there and decimate and move there. It's so deliberate. The signatures are the same, and yet these people can't be found in a place that's 30 kilometers. So this is what leads to that point where people in Kajuru would say there is a genocide, because the same area, Kajuru, you just cross over into Plateau through Rio, and people in Plateau will say there's a genocide. It's the same thing that happens over and over. And I'm glad that Bulama mentioned the signal is not far off. That tenuous link between what's happening in the Middle Belt and some of the guys who left the Boko Haram in the Northeast have always been made. They've never connected the dots. I actually think that there's a military, you know, you're 100% right, we're all Nigerians, and we need to knock our heads together, but we cannot separate the fact that there is a religious coloration. It's not to say that Muslims, I grew up with Muslims all my life. I grew up in Jos all my life. Those things are there, and we have to recognize them.
Thank you, Chanan. Anyone else before I go on to the next?
Yeah, I wanted to say something.
Yes, Khadija.
Yeah, I think now we're beginning to talk in a way that we will find a solution to what is happening. Nobody is saying that what's happening especially in southern Kaduna, it's really worrisome. Let me say that the insecurity in the country is worrisome, and it is because we have failed to speak with one voice. Perhaps that is why the nonchalant attitude of the government. And I wish we will come together to a point where all of us will raise a concern that we are tired of this insecurity, rather than, you know, the debate amongst us. Of course, I think what we are faced with Kajuru, last week we held a meeting with the governor, looking at Kajuru, Kauru, Kaura, and other places. And what we are discussing now is we have identified that, yes, there's infiltration of all of these criminals coming into Kaduna from Zamfara and Katsina, settling here, looking for a place. And you know, it is very easy for this kind of people to find a safe haven where there is conflict. And that's what we keep telling the people there in Kajuru, in southern Kaduna, that because of the existing conflict, which nobody is denying, there are issues, there are conflict there, so it is a safe haven for the criminals. And that's why all communities must be resilient, you know, must form resilient, not to fight amongst themselves whenever there's an attack from such criminals, but that they must come together to fight the criminals. And that this is my position. This is the position of all of us, saying that criminals are now fighting us, and they need to unite and have one voice so that we'll be able to ask the government.
Thank you.
To be responsive and responsible. Yeah.
Thank you, Khadija. Tutu wanted to come in.
I'm just going to add to what Ajia just said. They said we should not allow one bad apple to spoil the whole basket.
Yeah.
And I'm going to talk about what we haven't talked about since, which is the causes why we're having this issue. We start with corruption, because we have in Nigeria now that our governments are not accountable to us anymore, not in Nigeria as in today, at least for the last 40, 50 years, we've had irresponsible people making decisions for us. And because these people are irresponsible, their constitutional responsibility, they're not doing it. When such things happen, we end up with a large number of unemployed people. As of today, NBS says we have 33.5% of unemployment. When you have that large number of people sitting idle with nothing to do, with an open porous border that we have, the possibility for smugglers to bring guns is a lot easier. the possibility of bad apples among us, like the Boko Harams, the bandits, the others killing people, is to employ such people and pay them money. And until we deal with all those issues, these things are not going to go very quickly. Because you have an open border, it's porous. To bring in guns is very easy. And to employ people to do bad things is very easy.
There's just one thing that I wanted to bring. Thank you so much to everyone who's contributed and answered those questions absolutely excellently. I wanted to ask a question. There was something that I think it was Audu that brought it on and talked about, or it might have been one of the other panelists, and said when the Chibok issue happened, President Jonathan failed to visit Chibok, and also President Buhari failed to visit Chibok. And we've seen increasingly also where a lot of the sort of local stroke headsmen massacres take place. We don't see government presence there. We don't see a government going there and saying, you know, we are going to take charge, we're going to make this happen, we're going to stop it. Can we say therefore that, because I am yet to see publicly where anyone that has been captured as a member of maybe what we now call bandits or headsmen or whatever, that has been captured, has actually been brought to book and prosecuted. Therefore, is it the case that because people haven't seen public discourse and public prosecution of the bandits and people who have been carrying out these mass killings, is there a case for saying that you know, people might feel that there are some really strong powers behind them?
Can I respond to that, please?
Yes, please.
Can I respond to that? You see, let me respond to that. Yeah, you see, and that's what I'm saying, that unless all of us come together to identify what our real issues are, it will be very difficult. For example, yes, I agree with you. Things are happening and nobody is held responsible. So impunity is reigning in the country, and so anybody does anything and gets away with it. And it's not just Lia Sharibu, but even what happened in Plateau. I'll give an example of the general Al-Kali that was killed in Durham.
Referendum to decide our fate in this Nigerian construction.
Sorry, who is that? Can you please mute yourself, please? Sorry,
hello, are you talking to me?
Yeah,
no, I'm the one on the floor, please. I'm the one on the floor.
Khadija is on the floor. After her,
yes.
You can have the floor, please. Go on quickly.
So what I'm saying is that one of the problems of Nigeria is impunity. And I don't think, well, I'm not speaking for any individual.
We are different people. We need...
Sorry, who's that? I can't hear. Go on, please. Yeah.
So what I'm saying is that I'm not speaking, and please do not hold the Muslims or the Hausas or the Northerners responsible for the failure of the president if he fails to do something. And let us isolate these cases and not say, okay, because somebody has failed to do something as a leader, then the sin of that person should be visited by a larger population.
I would agree. I would accept your postulation only if members of the panel, including yourself, can answer a question. When you are in a war situation, when you're in a wartime situation, I don't see why or how you could possibly release people that you've captured who are killing your soldiers. So why are we witnessing situations?
1,400 of them.
Why are we witnessing situations where people who are killing?
It's not even an accurate number.
Sorry.
Thank you very much.
Sorry, please. Excuse me, please. This is a nice panel. Please, there's nothing against anybody. I'm just saying that we are still fighting Boko Haram. They are constantly killing our soldiers, killing our people in the north and in the south. How can you come up and say you have reformed Boko Haram and then you are releasing them? How is that possible? And if that is happening, how do you then expect people not to have and harbor some sort of feelings towards the government?
Can I come in?
Yes, please. Yes, Tutu, yes.
I think I'm just going to say it the way it is. There's no need for us to sugarcoat this. Buhari has failed when it comes to insecurity in Nigeria. He totally failed. And I will say
why
this.
did you Nigerians vote for him?
Sorry,
Why did you people vote for him back into office? Why?
Sorry,
Can I just finish?
Can
One
we
of the
have time
points-
to speak?
Sono, can you please mute whoever it is that, you know, Tutu has the floor, please.
Okay. So I remember in 2015, one of the main two things really that Buhari campaigned about was corruption.
Yes.
And the issue of Boko Haram. In fact, I like the word Chibok girls issue. He campaigned rigorously about those two things. But what I've seen since Buhari came to power is
President Buhari.
Yes.
Let's give him the honor. He's our
so is this, we don't have to go to the extent of punishing offender, especially the Boko Haram. As of this year, 1,400 Boko Haram were released. They call it spiritual cleansing. That is bullshit. Sorry about my language. That is total nonsense. We're still at war with these people. People are killed daily. And especially our soldiers. Our soldiers are the ones receiving the punishment most now. Every time they go to the barracks, they take over a whole barracks, take all the ammunition, kill the soldiers there. And we're releasing these people. Calling this cleansing. It's bullshit.
I have Ruben Buhari.
Okay,
Can
I come in here, please?
No, hold on, please. Ruben Buhari is there Ruben Buhari on the line?
Yeah, there is.
Okay, please go ahead. You have the floor. And then next is Kingsley Nwigwe. So Ruben, please go ahead.
Okay, I just want to comment on some of the what I've been hearing, that this is being perpetrated by criminals, is being perpetrated by this kind of people. But let me tell you, if you looked at the precision with which these killings takes place, you realize that we are dealing with something much, much bigger than we're trying to say. Now, in southern Kaduna, I followed these killings. It started in 2013 when Kaura local government was being hit, communities after communities. And then in 2014, it moved to Sanga local government. Community after communities were being hit. And then in 2015, the election took place and there was a law. In November of 2015, the first village in Jama, Ninte, was hit. And throughout village after village in Jama was being hit. In between 2014 and 2015, then it moved to Kauru local government. That was when Ungwamagaji village was being attacked. And then in 2016, there was a law. It went, and then in 2019, it moved to Kajuru. And village after village in Kajuru was being attacked, and then it stopped. Then now in 2020, from January, the attack started again in Kajuru. Yeah. So if you look at this thing, you begin to ask yourself, exactly, are these just isolated attacks happening? Or these are coordinated attacks? Are these aggrieved herdsmen that are killing? Or this is a specialized group that move from one community to community killing? Now, let me add more. If you look at what happened during the lockdown here, especially in Kaduna State, from Wednesday, March 25th, 2020, when the lockdown came into effect in Kaduna State, to the next month, 51 people were killed. 51 people were killed. To Friday, May 15th, they carried out 15 attacks across 5 local governments in Kaduna State, and they killed 51 people, and they burned down 151 houses, where a lot of people were displaced. So if you look at all these numbers that keep coming, in fact, let me tell you, under a 24-hour time frame, 29 people were killed from 5 attacks on 4 villages of Bonarogo, Idanudoka, Ungwarimi Doka, and Makiali. 29 people were killed in under 24 hours. So if you look at all these things, it raises the question as who are these people that are carrying on this kind of killing with so much precision?
Thank you, Ruben. Thank you for your contribution.
If I may add something to what just said.
I'll do.
It is this point that we know that there is Ansaru in north central Nigeria. I mean, the northwest and some parts of north central Nigeria, and we know that Ansaru is active in Kaduna. Ansaru is a Boko was formed in 2012, and they have a publicly declared policy of eliminating Christians, and they say they don't attack Muslim civilians. Now, I totally agree with Sister Adetutu and others that Buhari is a total and complete failure.
I totally agree.
President Buhari.
President Buhari, and that's why the government has refused to change its policy on northwestern Nigeria to become an a counter-insurgency policy. It is still saying it is
Can I ask something also that can I ask a question to all members of the panel? And that is true. If you, President Buhari used to be General Muhammad Buhari.
Yes.
And I know that during the campaign, one of the things that they used against the former president was, you know, he was a general, he knew how to fight wars, and he would decimate Boko Haram within 6 months. There will be nothing like
3 months.
So that hasn't happened. We all accept that hasn't happened. But regardless, he's still the leader of the nation. That's the first thing. The second thing is that, is it the case that as we keep moving forward and keep moving forward in all of these, we're heading towards 2023 again, there's going to be another election. What is the, if I wrote an exam and I didn't pass a few times, the chances are they'll ask me to leave. Why do we still have the heads of security services in place after almost 7 years of absolute total failure? Yes. Because all of us as Nigerians, there's something we all agree now on this panel. It is that there's a problem.
Yes.
Whether it is due to poverty, corruption, whatever it is, there is
or whatever
across all of the nation. And the heads of security that we have in place that are meant to keep the nation secure have all been there from when President Buhari took over. They have not been changed.
Hello?
Yes. So can we speak to that?
Hello? Yeah.
Yes.
Hello?
Yes.
Hello?
Yes.
I think it's not for us. It's not for us to answer why the president has refused to sack them. I think we're not in a position. But I can say, hello?
Yes, go on.
Yeah, it is not for any of us, I think, to say that why the president refused to sack them, even though they have failed severally. But I think one thing I can say personally is that why they are still there, it is because Nigerians, the elites, have refused to have a common voice, which will request, and I mean request, for the sacking of all those service chiefs that have failed Nigerians. It is because we are busy trying to redefine concepts. And instead of us to agree that we have a common problem, that the issues of Nigeria is consuming all of us, we are now battling, trying to define.
I think Hajia, I totally agree with you. Hajia, I think Hajia, I agree with you. I think this is, this question perhaps is behind, is beyond the scope of the discussion. And I think it would be foolhardy for anyone to think they understand the heart of President Buhari and try to answer that question. I think it'd be foolhardy for anyone to think that. But if I was to say anything in conclusion from my own point of view, I like what Ruben Buhari mentioned there on the call. The reality of it is we all have to come to the understanding that the modus operandi of this group in the North Central, in the Middle Belt, the precision behind it, the execution behind it, the way they execute and disappear into thin air, where we've had numerous STF, Special Task Force and all that, unable to find them, leans to the fact that there's something that's much more organized, much more sophisticated, that perhaps we are willing to accept or acknowledge or even know. And if you look at it's probably the same thing with Boko Haram up there. And one of the things we haven't spoken about actually, and you asked the question there, what's driving it? Many of us don't like to confront it, but the reality of it is that singular effort by Barack Obama, I'm sorry to say, to displace Colonel Gaddafi from there, opened a can of worms where arsenals were unleashed
from Libya
through the Sahara, and I think much of those weapons have proliferated into Nigeria, northern Nigeria, and now going southward. So it's something we have.
Thank you, China. I'm gonna
Can I speak, please? Can I speak?
Sorry, who's that? What is the name?
Chinwe.
Chinwe. Okay, Chinwe, can you quickly introduce yourself very quickly, and then you have the floor.
Right. My name is Chinwe Okechukwu. What I want to say is the lady, I think it's Khadija or so, that was talking about the elites not being able to say something. I don't know how could the elites say something or come up with something when we all know that in Nigeria, if you speak your mind, you are a goner. We know that it's a fact. You speak your mind, you are a goner. And then when you
your mind, you're a goner. Thank you very much for
and
that.
when you come to the house, when there is not enough representation in the house, come to the house, we have a lot of the representation there are all from the House of Fulanis.
Okay, thank you for your contributions. I am now going to I'm going to round up. I'm going to allow each of the panelists 1 minute each, please. Just 1 minute to sum up your position, and then I will then hand over to the chair, to Mr. Adedoyin for his closing remarks. So starting from Khadija, 1 minute, followed by Audu, followed by Inan, and then Ini, and then Tutu. Thank you.
Let me say with all sense of responsibility that I personally feel pained by what is happening in this country. I think we do not deserve what is happening in our country. And that's why I'm calling on all of us, in spite of what we feel and what we think, that the situation now, what the situation calls for now, is not this division, but the coming together of all of us, irrespective of what we think, and look for a way forward and put it forward to our government that we cannot afford to die like that, like food. So I think this is my position, that all of us should come together and chart a common cause. Yeah.
Thank you, Khadija.
I think I will end on this note. Number one, that we are all agreed that Nigeria is in a total mess and our lives do not worth anything in our country. Secondly, we all agree that our government has woefully failed. Jide asks, why do we still have these service chiefs in office? And my question, it goes even beyond that. My question goes beyond that and says, why do we even still have Buhari in Asorok? It's because Nigerians have refused to unite and come together and understand that our enemies are the elites. And my final point is, I propose to this sitting that we release a communique either in the name of this platform or as Nigerians in diaspora, that we are totally and completely disappointed in Buhari and call for the sacking of the service chiefs. Even if at least we have said our mind and our conscience.
I will leave that to Mr. Adedoyin. Thank you very much. Can I have Dr. Ini Dele Adedeji to sum, please?
Thank you. Nigerians have always historically been divided along religious and ethnic lines, and sadly, the political class, the political elite, use our differences basically to divide us even further to their own collective advantage, basically. And that's what we see, especially with the killings taking place in the middle belt of Nigeria, where what we're seeing is not just the breakdown of the security infrastructure in the country, but also killings happening with impunity. And sadly, everyone, because of the way the nation has been set up, as I said earlier on the program, to fail, everyone looks at these issues along ethno-religious lines, essentially, which makes it difficult for us to, quote unquote, come together to address these issues with one voice. And until we fix that as a nation and have these uncomfortable conversations, we are not going to be able to make any tangible progress.
Thank you for your contributions. Thank you. Thanks for that summation. I'm going to go to Dr. Chinan to give his summation, please.
Yes. I'd say it's a genocide unfolding in Nigeria. I think it's too complex to answer that question in full. Is there a genocide in the Middle Belt, what we're seeing? 100%. I think that's very true. And I think the question they have asked is a very relevant question. If you ask me, I think this is a first piece into hopefully something that can arrest the situation, because so far in Nigeria, we've been unable to crack that whip. I think any external and international pressure is a good one. And I think this it's a first step towards, towards getting that. In summary, I think what Bulama has said is an incredible suggestion. I think Adedoyin, Ayo, if you consider that, that'd be great. I think we should 100% release something out there in the public domain so people know that conversations are starting to happen.
Thank you. I'm just checking. Has Dr. Allen also done a summation as well?
Yes, I would like to say that we as citizens must accept and cure our indifference. Our indifference in the sense that when problem is when a particular person is having challenge.
Oh, internet.
We must look at it as our collective challenge, especially when it's at our doorstep before we realize that yes, life is involved. And we must make sure that our voices are heard. Let us not, be the ones that will fear as if we say something, the government is going to come after us. No, if we had, remained quiet, many people wouldn't have known that girls were abducted even in Chibok, but we insisted with the arrest, with the harassment, and all other things that happened to us as members of the Bring Back Our Girls. We resisted and we made our point clear to a level that without that loud voices, we wouldn't have even gotten the attention of the global community to the issues of humanitarian challenges in the Northeast. So we have to talk and cure our indifference.
Thank you, Dr. Manasseh. And finally, Mrs. Adetutu Balogun, you have 1 minute to sum up.
So Nigeria needs to address all the security challenges we're facing in all those various geopolitical areas that we have in Nigeria. Equally, one thing which I'm very passionate about, I don't want to take out of this, is equally, we need to cater for our displaced population. This is because the two issues are interdependent. If you solve the security issue, you are reducing the number of people that will be displaced at the same time. So I think the population of displaced people has no voice. And we're talking about the issue that is creating them, but we're not doing anything in terms of how we're taking care of those people affected. And I think for me, this is something I'm very passionate about because this is what I do most in Nigeria. The displaced community has been neglected. They have no voice. There are some villages that have been cut off, that nobody is taking food to them. Nobody knows how they're being fed. I mean, Dr. Harlan knows what I'm talking about because we've done some work together regarding this issue. So I think as we're talking about the genocide, we should not forget this group of people. We talk about the genocide, we talk about what the genocide is creating.
Thank you very much. And I'd like to say thank you so much to all my panelists. It's been wonderful hearing from you all. I do want to say, I think as it was said by a Roman dramatist, I think around about 190 to 159 BC, he said, there are as many opinions as there are people. Each has his own point of view. On this program, on this platform today, we have heard a lot of opinions. Each of those opinions belong to the respective owners. We thank you for sharing your opinions with us. We have to collectively agree that as a people, we have a long way to go in dealing with some of these challenges. But actually, for all that I've heard so far, I think everyone wants to come around to the table and actually provide solutions to the problem. But there are some things that are sort of hindering us. Those things we need to get to the bottom of. I think we've heard that some of those things might be politics, some of them may be religious, some of them may be ethnic. But the question still remains, and that was what we're trying to answer, whether we should put a question mark after the word genocide. So is it a genocide? Is it not a genocide? I think that was the basis of our discussion today. And we didn't really get to because we couldn't ever have been able to answer that question. But I want to thank you so much. It is said, I think it was Mark Twain that said, it is difference of opinion that makes horses races. So in effect, we have run the race. There are no winners, and certainly there are no losers. I thank you for your difference in opinions, but also I want to say that this is a country that we all want to build together. The fact that most of us still have fear and are afraid in going to different parts of the country, it just means that the country is nowhere where it ought to be. So I want to thank you very much. I'm saying to the members of the audience who, for some reasons, if you haven't had your questions sort of addressed, please check the website of PSJ. And I'm going to hand over to the CEO of PSJ very quickly. But please check their website and social media from Wednesday morning. I believe this is being recorded, and it will be played. It probably will be on the website as well. I would mention the chairman of Ben Television, and I think Mr. Ayo Adedoyin will also mention in passing as well. So thank you very much to him. I'd also like to say a very big, and maybe I should have said this at the very beginning, a very dear friend. I would probably even describe him as a mentor. We lost him this morning. That is Richie Dyer Johnson. May his soul rest in peace. He was very well known in the diaspora, and certainly moved to Nigeria. Was one of the founding people of TVC, and done quite a lot of stuff in Nigeria. So in final, please, let's take this COVID thing very seriously. Many people that we know have died of COVID. Please keep safe. Look after yourselves. Look after your families and your friends. Thank you very much. As I hand over to the CEO of PSJ, Mr. Ayo Adedoyin. Thank you.
Mr. Jide, thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, would you join me in thanking Mr. Jide Iyanewura for excellent job of moderating and chairing what, by all accounts, is not a very easy conversation. It's a very complex matter. I want to thank him firstly. I also want to thank all the panelists for giving your time to come and speak into this matter. This is really just the start of a conversation. It's and I'm glad that some things have come up in this conversation that can push us towards where we want to go. Hajia talked about the importance of coming together and forming a common cause. And that is something which, as we go forward, we would jointly look for ways to make happen. I take Bulama's really excellent suggestion on board. And as Mr. Jide also said, for all of you who have joined tonight and we've not been able to get to your questions, we will send them off to the panelists and encourage them to just pen answers to your various questions so that we can publish those online. And of course, we will be back again very soon to carry on this conversation, not just for the sake of conversation, but so that we can begin to chart solutions and begin to push them forward. If anyone would like to be part of this drive forward, PSJ is focused particularly on Nigeria at this point in time. So please do jump on our website and sign up so that we can move together to achieve the Nigeria of our dreams. I want to thank you very much for giving up your time tonight. I apologize that we've gone over the amount of time we planned to spend. I think it's only indicative of the fact that the issues are really, really complex. We didn't even really get to as many questions as we would love to. But thank you so much for giving of your time. And once again, to our very able chair, Mr. Jide Iyanewura, thank you for doing an excellent job tonight. On behalf of Alistair Shoyode and the team at Ben and the entire team at PSJ UK, we give you our thanks. Have a good night and God bless.
Thank you.